Hey guys, before we start, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment if you have any feedback. Let's go to the story. I never expected to find out like that. If I had any lingering doubts about my place in my family, they disappeared when I saw the will. It wasn't a conversation, not some heartfelt discussion in which my parents sat me down and explained their reasoning. No, I stumbled upon the truth by accident, and in the cruelest way possible. That day was like any other. I had stopped by their house, my childhood home, the one I had spent the last few years helping them keep. Mortgage payments, house repairs, even grocery runs when things got tight. I had been there through it all. My brother, on the other hand, had done absolutely nothing. He wasn't just unemployed. He wasn't just unmotivated. He was a leech, sitting comfortably while life happened around him, waiting for my parents to fix every problem he created. And apparently, that was exactly what they planned to do forever. I should have seen it coming. The signs had always been there. The favoritism, the way my parents softened their tone when speaking to him, the endless excuses they made on his behalf. I had convinced myself that, despite everything, they still valued me, that my contributions meant something, that all the years of supporting them, of stepping in when they needed help, had earned me a place in their future. I was wrong. It happened while I was helping my dad with some paperwork. He was never great with these things, so I had stepped in, as always. A pile of documents sat in front of me, financial statements, insurance forms, and then a thick folder labeled estate plan and last will and testament. The words hit me like a slap. I wasn't a snoop, never had been, but a cold unease crept up my spine as I stared at it. I had every right to know. I had given years of my life making sure this house, their stability, and their entire way of living stayed intact. So I opened it. The first thing I saw was my brother's name, over and over again. The house, the savings, the investments, every last cent. It was all his. My name wasn't anywhere. Not a mention, not even a token gesture of fairness. Nothing. I was a ghost in their plans, an afterthought that wasn't worth including. A hollow numbness settled in my chest. I read through the pages again, hoping I had missed something, some small recognition of my role in their lives. There was nothing. Just a generic line about loving both of their sons equally, which was laughable considering the evidence in front of me. I had built my life around the belief that I mattered to them. No matter how many times they overlooked me, they still saw me as their son. But I was just a placeholder, a convenient safety net they never intended to acknowledge. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at those papers, my hands shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. Hey, what's taking so long? My dad's voice cut through my thoughts as he walked back into the room. He hadn't noticed the will in my hands yet, hadn't realized the damage was already done. I looked up at him, my heart pounding in my chest, and held up the folder. So this is how it is? My voice was steady, too calm for the storm brewing inside me. Everything to him? His face went pale for a second. Just a flicker, barely there, before he let out a long sigh. Not shock, not guilt, just annoyance, like I was making a big deal out of nothing. It's not what you think, he said, running a hand over his face. I scoffed. Oh, really? Because it looks pretty damn clear to me. I waited for an explanation. Something. Anything. Maybe a weak attempt at reassuring me, a reason that didn't sound like a complete betrayal. But all he did was mutter the same useless phrase. It's complicated. That was it. No apology. No justification. Just an empty excuse from a man who had made his decision and was now hoping I'd just accept it. I should have walked out right then. But I needed to hear it from both of them. So I called for my mother. My mother entered the room, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel, a soft smile already forming on her face. That smile faltered the second she saw my expression. My dad stood stiffly beside me, arms crossed, waiting. Neither of them spoke first. I held up the will. Care to explain this? She swallowed hard. Her eyes flicked to my dad, then back to me. Jake, honey, don't. My voice was sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. I just want to hear it. From you. Why? A pause. Then she sighed, shifting her weight uncomfortably. You don't need the inheritance, she said finally, her voice calm, as if she was offering me some great wisdom instead of betrayal wrapped in a motherly tone. You have a good job. You're independent. Your brother, well, he struggles. We want to make sure he's taken care of. A dull ringing filled my ears. I had prepared myself for excuses, but this? That's the reason? I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. I've been helping you pay your mortgage, fixing up the house, buying groceries when you needed it. He does nothing. And somehow, he's the one who needs help. They exchanged a glance as if my reaction was unreasonable. He's had a hard time finding stability. My mom tried again. We didn't want him to struggle. I clenched my fists at my sides. I had struggled. I had scraped by for years, working extra shifts to make sure they never fell behind on their bills. I had sacrificed my own savings, my own comfort, my own peace of mind for them. And yet, my existence didn't even warrant a footnote in their plans. Something inside me snapped. I set the will on the table, pressing my palm against it as if I needed to feel something solid, something real. "Got it," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Glad to know where we stand." Then I turned and walked out of the house. I heard my mother call after me, her voice rising in alarm. My father said my name sharply, like he was scolding a child. I ignored them, the sound of the door slamming behind me cutting off whatever nonsense they planned to feed me next. I got in my car and drove, but I don't remember where. My vision was a blur, my thoughts tangled and sharp. How long had they planned this? Had they always intended for me to be nothing more than a free safety net while they funneled every resource into my brother? Had they ever actually appreciated what I had done for them? The weight of the realization pressed against my chest. They had made their decision. Now it was time for me to make mine. I didn't go back after that. I didn't call. I didn't check in. For the first time in years, I let them handle their own problems. If something broke, they could fix it. If they needed groceries, they could buy them. If the mortgage bill showed up, they could figure out how to pay it. Days passed. Then weeks. At first, I think they assumed I was just sulking, that I'd cool off and come crawling back like always. Maybe they expected me to apologize for daring to question their choices. But the days kept passing. And more importantly, the money stopped. Then the text started. The first was from my dad. "The property taxes are due." That was it. There was no, "Hey, how have you been?" No apology, and no acknowledgement of what had happened. It was just a transactional request, like I was still their personal ATM. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. "I'm sure Michael will handle it since the house is his and all." It took 5 minutes for my phone to start ringing. My mother's name flashed across the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the next text. "Jake, please don't be like this. We need to talk." Oh, now they wanted to talk. Now that the bills were piling up. Now that their reality was finally crashing down on them. I let them stew for an hour before replying. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Now live with it." I figured that would be the end of it. I had made myself clear. But I had underestimated just how deeply entitled they were. Because that night, my brother decided to get involved. His text came in late, his name flashing across my screen like a bad joke. "Dude, why are you being so dramatic? It's not a big deal. Just help them out like you always do." I nearly laughed. "Not a big deal? Not a big deal?" I typed back, fingers flying over the screen. "No, I think you've got it covered since you're the favorite and all." His response was immediate. "Oh my God, are you seriously mad about the will? Grow up, man. It's just money." I let out a slow breath. Now, it was just money. Now that it was his, it was suddenly meaningless. I sent one last message. "Then you won't mind using some of that money to pay the mortgage, right?" Silence. For the first time in his entire life, my brother had no response. A few minutes later, my mother texted again. This time, she went full guilt trip mode. "Jake, we're your parents. Family takes care of each other. We did so much for you growing up, and now you're just abandoning us." I closed my eyes, feeling my pulse hammering in my temples. Abandoning them? Abandoning them? I had spent years ensuring they never had to struggle. Years of sacrificing my own financial security for them, while they coddled my brother and rewarded his laziness. And now that they finally had to face the consequences of their own choices, I was the bad guy? I took a deep breath and then typed my final response. "You made it clear I wasn't part of the family when you left me out of the will. Now, Michael can take care of you." I could imagine my mother gasping at that. I could see her clutching her chest, playing the wounded victim. A few minutes later, my dad sent another text. This one made my blood boil. "We're not asking for much. Just enough to cover the mortgage for a few more months until we figure things out. Don't be selfish." Selfish. That word made something in me snap. I had been bailing them out for years, sacrificing my time, my energy, and my money. I had been everything a good son was supposed to be. And how had they repaid me? By cutting me out completely. I clenched my jaw, took a deep breath, and typed back. "No, I'm done." Then I turned off my phone. The silence lasted a day. I knew my parents wouldn't give up that easily, but I wasn't prepared for what they did next. The next morning, I woke up to a notification on my phone. A bank transfer request. I frowned, unlocking my phone to check. It was from my mother. She had actually sent me a request for money, not a message, not an explanation, just a cold, shameless demand. $3,500. I stared at the screen, half laughing at the audacity. No call, no apology, just a request for the exact amount they needed to cover their overdue mortgage. They weren't even asking anymore. They just assumed I'd cave. I declined it without hesitation. Not even 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Then another text popped up. Jake, I know you saw the request. Why did you decline it? I took my time before responding. Because it's not my responsibility. Try Michael. Another call. Declined. Then another text. We're going to lose the house if you don't help us. Oh, now it was an emergency. Now, after years of treating me like a walking wallet, of rewarding my brother for doing nothing while expecting me to handle everything, they were suddenly desperate. I typed back, maybe you should have thought about that before deciding I didn't matter. A few seconds later, my dad chimed in. His text was short, clipped, and designed to hit me right in the guilt. You're really going to let your parents become homeless? I actually laughed out loud. The manipulation was so blatant it was almost funny. They weren't broke. They weren't about to be thrown on the streets. They just didn't want to dip into their own savings because they had gotten comfortable with me covering everything. I ignored them for the rest of the day. That night, I got a text from my brother. Dude, just send them the money already. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. I clenched my jaw. This entitled little prick really thought he could lecture me. I typed back. You mean the same money you're inheriting? Why don't you send it? His response came fast. You know, I don't have that kind of cash right now. Oh, so now it was about affordability? He was perfectly fine with me draining my accounts for them, but the second it was his turn, suddenly he had nothing to offer. I replied, guess you better figure it out then, bro. You're the one they chose. No response. I went to bed feeling oddly at peace, like I had finally broken free from years of emotional manipulation. But the next day, things escalated. I was at work when I got a call from my apartment's front desk. Hey, Jake. Your parents are here. I nearly dropped my phone. What? They're saying it's an emergency and that you won't answer their calls. I pinched the bridge of my nose, anger flaring in my chest. Did they actually show up at my apartment? Because I stopped paying their bills? I took a deep breath. Please don't let them up. I'm not expecting them. There was an awkward pause. They're being kind of pushy. I clenched my jaw. I don't care. They can leave. I hung up and immediately got a text from my mother. We're downstairs. Open the door. No question. No explanation. Just another demand. I didn't reply. Another text. Jake, we're not leaving until you talk to us. I exhaled sharply, standing up from my desk. They weren't going to back down. Fine. I was about to teach them a lesson they wouldn't forget. I grabbed my keys and stormed downstairs, my blood boiling. I wasn't scared. I was furious. The sheer audacity of these people. To show up at my home, uninvited, demanding money like I was their personal ATM. Not even a phone call first. Not even a half-hearted apology. Just a full-on ambush because they thought they could corner me into submission. I yanked the door open, and there they were. Mom, Dad, and, of course, Michael. All standing in a tight little formation like they were about to stage a family intervention. My mother had her arms crossed, her classic disappointed mother look locked and loaded. My father stood stiffly beside her, hands in his pockets, his expression a mix of frustration and entitlement. Like he couldn't believe I was actually making him do this in person. And Michael? The leech himself? He looked bored. Like this whole situation was just mildly inconvenient for him. Like he wasn't the reason any of this was happening. The moment my mother saw me, she went full theatrics. Jake. Finally. We need to talk. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. No. You need to leave. Her face twisted. Excuse me. You heard me. My voice was calm, controlled, but firm. You don't get to just show up at my apartment demanding money. That's insane. My father scoffed. Are you really going to let us lose the house over a petty grudge? I let out a cold laugh. Petty grudge? Oh, you mean the one where you decided I was good enough to pay your bills, but not good enough to be in your will? That grudge. My mother gasped, clutching her chest like I had just slapped her. Jake, that's not fair. We only did what we thought was best for the family. I tilted my head. Best for the family? You mean the best for Michael? Just say it. Silence. A long, heavy silence. Michael, who had been weirdly quiet up until now, finally spoke up. Look, man, I don't even want to be involved in this. I didn't ask for anything. I turned to him, finally letting loose. No, you just sit back and take everything that's handed to you. You're 35 years old, Michael. Get a damn job. His face turned red. Dude, what the hell? I took a step closer. You heard me. You want to inherit the house? Start acting like a homeowner. Do you want to be the golden child? Start paying their damn bills. I'm done being your personal bank. Michael looked away, suddenly very interested in the pavement. My mother took a deep breath, recalibrating her guilt trip. Jake, he's your brother. I nodded. Yep. And I've supported him longer than you ever have. My father's face darkened. You're being selfish. I laughed. A real, genuine laugh. Oh, that's rich coming from you. My father's jaw tightened, his nostrils flaring slightly. I could see the struggle in his eyes, the effort it took to not lose his temper right then and there. He was used to having control over me, used to me backing down, used to me fixing everything. But this time, I wasn't playing along. You two decided Michael deserved everything, I said slowly, voice sharp as a knife. And I deserved nothing. And now that it's time to pay the price for that choice, you're trying to manipulate me into fixing it for you. Not happening. Mom's voice sharpened. We thought you'd be mature about this. I raised an eyebrow. Mature? You mean, quietly accept that I was betrayed and keep paying your bills? Because let's be real, that's what you wanted. Dad stepped forward, trying to loom over me like he used to when I was a kid. Jake, he said, voice low, rehearsed, we raised you. We fed you, clothed you, gave you everything. The least you can do is help us now. I met his gaze, unblinking. I already did, I said. For years. And you repaid me by cutting me out. Mom's lip trembled. We thought you'd understand. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. Oh, I understand perfectly. I understand that I was never family to you. Just a paycheck. Silence. A suffocating, undeniable silence. I turned to Michael, who was still pretending to be invisible. And you? I said, my voice colder now. What's your excuse? You had years to grow up, to get your life together, to contribute. But you didn't, because you knew they'd take care of you. And when they're gone, you just expected me to step in, huh? Michael finally snapped. What do you want me to say, man? I didn't ask for this. I nodded slowly. Right? You didn't ask. You just benefited. His mouth opened, then closed. Nothing. He had nothing. Mom tried one last guilt trip, her voice trembling. Jake, we're family. Family takes care of each other. I stared at her for a long moment before answering. Exactly, I said. So why didn't you take care of me? She froze. No words. No comeback. Nothing. I let out a slow breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. We're done here, I said. I turned and walked back inside. I didn't slam the door. I didn't let them see my hands shaking. I just closed it quietly, letting the weight of my decision sink in. I didn't even make it back to my couch before my phone buzzed. A new text from Dad. Wow. After everything we've done for you, you're going to abandon us. I smirked. Typed back. No, you abandoned me. I'm just finally accepting it. I hit send. Then I blocked their numbers. But I had no idea that blocking them was only going to make things worse. At first, I thought it was over. I went about my days in peace for the first time in years. No calls. No texts. No sudden demands for money. But then, less than 24 hours later, things spiraled out of control. It started with Facebook. Now, my parents had never been the most tech-savvy, but they sure as hell knew how to air their grievances online, especially when they felt like the victims. At first, I ignored it. I figured it was just their usual dramatics. But the longer I scrolled through their feeds, the more I realized this wasn't just about me not paying their bills anymore. They were turning this into something bigger. The posts were disguised as family love, but they were thinly veiled attacks on me. My mother had posted something about how she didn't raise her son to be so selfish, followed by some long-winded rant about how true family helps each other, no matter what. A few of her friends chimed in, commenting about how I was a disappointment, how I was out of touch with what matters. Then, my dad jumped in with his post. So-called family should never turn their back when you need them most. We gave everything to our children, and this is how we're repaid? My son, who should be helping us in our golden years, has chosen to abandon us. I hope he's happy. And then, the real kicker. Michael. He had shared their posts, adding his little gem of wisdom. Some people think family is just about money. They don't understand that family is about love and sacrifice. I'd do anything for my parents, but some people just don't get that. They're too wrapped up in themselves to realize what real love means. I should have known. I should have expected it. But still, something inside me snapped all over again. They were rewriting the narrative, turning me into the villain. In their version of events, I wasn't the son who had kept them afloat for years. I wasn't the one who had sacrificed my own future to make sure they were stable. No, in their version of the story, I was just the selfish one. The ungrateful son who had abandoned his sacrificial parents. The one who didn't appreciate all the love they had given me over the years. I had to swallow the fact that somehow, they had convinced themselves they were in the right. And now, they were telling the world that I was the problem. I didn't react immediately. I took a step back, collected my thoughts. Waited. I didn't want to rush into something out of anger. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't let them get away with this. If they were going to drag my name through the mud, then I was going to set the record straight. So I pulled out my phone, opened Facebook, and I started typing. I wasn't interested in playing their game. I didn't want to get into some petty back and forth on social media. What I wanted was the truth to be out there. So I kept it simple. I opened my Facebook account, the one I barely used, the one I kept for actual friends and distant relatives. And I posted this. I know my family has been posting a lot of things about me recently. A lot of you have probably seen it. I've kept quiet up until now, but I think it's time I tell my side of the story. For years, I helped my parents. When they needed money, I gave it to them. When they needed something fixed, I did it. When they were struggling, I made sure they never had to. I didn't complain. I didn't ask for anything in return. I did what a good son was supposed to do. My brother, on the other hand, did nothing. He never worked, never contributed, never lifted a finger to help. And yet, my parents rewarded him. They gave him everything. And I mean everything. When I found out about their will, I realized I had never really mattered to them. Not in the way he did. They made their choice. And now, they're upset that I finally made mine. They aren't losing their house. They aren't homeless. They just don't want to be responsible for themselves because they got too used to me fixing their problems. So to anyone who has been supporting their posts, please know, there are two sides to every story. Family isn't just about blood. It's about respect. I've given enough for a lifetime. I'm done. I hit post. And then I logged off. I didn't sit around refreshing the page. I didn't wait for the reactions to pour in. I went out, got in my car, drove around the city with my windows down, letting the cold air clear my head. It wasn't until hours later that I checked. And the response was explosive. People I hadn't spoken to in years were commenting and messaging me. Some of my cousins. Some old family friends. Even a few people from my parents' church group. There were messages of support. People were saying they had always suspected the favoritism. They were sorry I had gone through that I didn't deserve it. And then there were the people who had blindly supported my parents, now backtracking in real time. The tone had shifted. Now it wasn't, how could you abandon your family? Now it was, I didn't realize it was like that. Now it was, I just hope you and your parents can work things out. They were scrambling. And that meant one thing. The truth was sinking in. Of course, my parents weren't going to let it go without a fight. The next morning, I woke up to a voicemail from my dad. I hesitated before pressing play. His voice came through the speaker, clipped, tight, with barely concealed rage. You had no right to post that, Jake. No right at all. You've humiliated your mother. You've humiliated this family. You've made us look like monsters. You think this makes you look good? It doesn't. It makes you look bitter, selfish, a bad son. And one day, you'll regret it. One day, you'll see that family is all that matters. But by then, it'll be too late. You think those people supporting you online actually care about you? They don't. But we're your parents. We raised you. And now, you've turned your back on us. A long, heavy pause. Then he said, almost pleadingly, come to the house. Let's talk. You don't have to fix everything. Just, let's talk. I deleted the voicemail. I didn't respond. It was too late for that. Because I knew exactly what that was. That wasn't an apology. That wasn't remorse. That was damage control. They didn't want to fix anything. They wanted me to shut up. They wanted me to go back to the way things were, when I quietly took care of them, when I didn't question why I was always the one making sacrifices. They weren't sorry for what they had done. They were sorry I had finally told the truth. That realization settled over me like a cold certainty. I wasn't going back. Not now. Not ever. The silence lasted a few days. I thought maybe, just maybe, my parents had finally gotten the message. But then, on a quiet evening, as I was making dinner, my phone lit up again. A private number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick it up. The second I did, I regretted it. Michael. Jake, he said, his voice casually smug, like we were old friends catching up. So, you really went and embarrassed Mom and Dad online, huh? I sighed, already exhausted. Michael, what do you want? He let out a mocking laugh. Damn, bro. You're really holding this grudge, huh? Over a will? Over some money? It's just money, man. I gritted my teeth. Then why don't you pay the mortgage? Silence. I almost laughed. Look, he muttered, clearly uncomfortable. Mom's been crying. Dad's pissed. You made your point. You got everyone feeling sorry for you. But it's time to let it go. Just come home. Talk to them. Fix this. Fix this. That was rich, coming from him. I leaned against the counter, gripping my phone. Tell me something, Michael. If the roles were reversed, If Mom and Dad had left everything to me and you got nothing, would you be upset? He snorted. That would never happen. I blinked. He realized what he just said, and for the first time in his entire life, I heard him hesitate. I mean, he stammered, they just knew I needed it more. That's all. I smirked bitterly. Right. You didn't ask for anything, but you always knew you'd get it. Silence. Grow up, Michael, I said finally. I'm done. I hung up, and for the first time ever, I didn't feel an ounce of guilt. Michael wasn't worth my anger anymore, and neither were my parents. But the thing about people like them, they don't let go that easily. The next day, my apartment building's receptionist called. Hey, Jake. Your parents are here. I nearly dropped my coffee. Again? They said it's an emergency, she added hesitantly. They're asking to be let up. I exhaled, pinching the bridge of my nose. These people. No, I said. Tell them to leave. I'm not expecting them. A pause. They said they'll wait in the lobby. Of course, they did. I hung up, grabbed my keys, and headed straight down. When the elevator doors opened, there they were. Mom, Dad, and Michael. Sitting on the lobby couches like a staged intervention, Mom clutching a crumpled tissue, Dad with his cold disappointment look, Michael pretending to be mildly interested in the floor tiles. I walked right up to them. You need to leave, I said, flatly. Mom's head snapped up, eyes red-rimmed. Jake, honey, please, just... No. Dad stood up slowly. We need to talk. No, we don't. Michael rolled his eyes. Dude, you're being so dramatic. I turned to him, and whatever he saw on my face shut him up instantly. Dad stepped forward, lowering his voice. Jake, don't do this. I laughed. Don't do this? You showed up at my home. You keep calling me, demanding money, and now you're stalking me in my own building. This is harassment. Mom gasped. We're your family. I stared at her. Then act like it. Another heavy silence. I could see it, that small moment where they realized I wasn't the same person anymore. I wasn't going to bend. I wasn't going to give in. Dad exhaled sharply, rubbing his temple. Jake, let's be reasonable. Let's just... I shook my head. No, I don't owe you anything. You made your choice. Live with it. I turned and walked away, heading for the elevator. Mom called after me, but I didn't stop. And when the doors closed, cutting them off completely, I felt lighter. They were never going to change. But I had. And I wasn't looking back. After that confrontation, the silence lasted weeks. It was the longest stretch of peace I'd had since this all began. I didn't hear from them. No texts. No calls. No surprise visits. I thought it was over. But I should have known better. One afternoon, while scrolling mindlessly through social media, I saw it. A long, dramatic post from my mother. She had gone public. Families should never turn their backs on each other. We sacrificed so much for our children, but some people only care about themselves. Some people forget where they came from. They throw away the people who raised them like we're nothing. But no matter what, a parent's love is unconditional. It was filled with vague guilt-tripping, sprinkled with just enough misdirection to make her look like the victim. And, of course, the comment section was flooded with supporters. Oh, I'm so sorry you're going through this. You did everything for him, and this is how he repays you? Ungrateful kids these days. I felt my pulse tick up, but I kept scrolling. Because Dad had posted too. His was shorter, but just as manipulative. Parents shouldn't have to beg their children for help. We raised him, gave him everything, and now he's abandoned us. Hope you're happy, Jake. And then Michael. Michael, the spineless coward, had jumped on board. It's sad when people forget what real family means. Some of us know how to be grateful. Some of us know how to take care of the people who took care of us. The hypocrisy was so thick that I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I sat there, phone in hand, reading comment after comment of people siding with them. Because that's what they were good at, painting themselves as the martyrs. And I was the selfish villain. I took a deep breath. Then I made my decision. I wasn't going to fight them. I wasn't going to respond. I wasn't going to waste one more second trying to prove myself to people who would never see the truth. Instead, I went to my phone settings. Blocked them all. Mom, Dad, Michael. Blocked them on my phone. Blocked them on social media. Blocked every flying monkey relative who was eating up their sob story. And then, I moved on. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. No more guilt. No more obligations. No more feeling like I had to earn my place in a family that never really considered me equal. They made their choice. And now, I was making mine. It's been 6 months since I walked away. 6 months of quiet. 6 months of freedom. And you know what? I've never been happier. I got a promotion at work. Moved to a new city. Met people who actually care about me. Not because of what I can give them, but because of who I am. I'm not angry anymore. Not even bitter. I just feel light. Because the truth is, some families don't deserve you. Some people will take and take and take until there's nothing left of you but guilt and exhaustion. And the only way to win is to walk away. So that's what I did. And I don't regret a single thing.